Hey everybody, today I am going to be talking about my top 5 favorite movies of 2016. I know that this has been a very, very tough year for the entire world, but in life, nothing is ever completely bad, nothing is ever completely good, and I think in this case there was some good for sure that came out of this year, and one of them is that we could be inspired by some really, really great movies. So without further ado, here they are, and this is going to be in alphabetical order. First film I'm going to talk about is Elle, and this was directed by Paul Verhoeven, and I think that this film is probably, of the films I saw this year, I think this one is maybe the most layered, the most complex, the one that I think I will be returning to the most and finding more to kind of take away from it. It really gets into the psychology of sexual desire and how a lot of times that can merge with violence and pain. And the main character in the film is, to me, one of the great female protagonists that I've seen in a long, long time. Elisabeth Huppert, who plays the role, Michelle, is just astounding in this movie. And she's just such an interesting character, very alluring in a very kind of subtle way. She covers so many facets. She's very much an anti-hero, and we see that a lot in male characters, but we don't see that very often with females. And, she's flawed, she's manipulative, she's jealous, she's duplicitous, but yet she's also very strong, very determined, and she's a woman who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to go for it. And she also recognizes her own shame, and that's an interesting thing to see in a character. And I just love the way that her character and just the writing of it all, and in her performance, how it just embodied all those facets so beautifully. This film is a thriller, but even in that context, it still takes so many turns that you don't see coming. It's not a film that likes to, take loose ends and tie them up together. There are a lot of questions that are not answered. And that is, I think, part of the appeal of the film, because it's kind of manipulating you and it's conscious of those conceits. And it's also very cheeky and satirical in that respect. And the film is taking psychosexualized violence and showing us how desensitized we are to it, how we often romanticize things. And it really delves into that, and it's sort of exploring where all that fascination and that animalistic nature comes from in human nature. And I can understand how this film can frustrate people. It's definitely not for everyone because it is very convoluted, but I personally loved it, and I think if you're somebody who really likes to dig into those human complexities, this is the film for you. My next film on the list is Krisha, and this is directed by Trey Edward Shults. And like Elle, we have another wonderfully compelling character in Krisha, who is the protagonist and also very much an anti-hero. This film affected me on such a visceral level, and I think a lot of people responded to it in that way, at least those who saw it. And honestly, I was just very excited to see such a young voice like Shults, the director, which is so pronounced yet so personal, and it just opened up to me just this wide range of possibilities for him. This film is definitely a cinephile's wet dream because it conveys imagery in such an interesting way. The cinematography is spectacular, just the rhythm of it, it's very suspenseful. It really conveys Krisha's alienation from the rest of her family in the film, and it builds up the paranoia in a way that is just highly pronounced, and I ate it up. And it's a very, very painful story that just builds and builds and builds, as I said, on a very visceral, very intense level up until its final moments. And to me, the last, say, maybe 10-15 minutes of the film is one of the most powerful endings that I've seen all year. And the story behind the production of the film is utterly fascinating, I think. I mean, I won't go into it here, but you should look it up, if you decide to see the film, or if you have and don't know. It's really interesting, and it makes the film seem all the more personal. It's a film about family and how love can often be marred by our actions. And in this case, Krisha has done things that a lot of her family feels is unforgivable because she abandoned them. But yet at the same time, Krisha is a person too, and she has flaws like everyone else. We make mistakes, and she needs to be loved just as much as I do or you do. And I had a few complaints about the film, but one of the main ones, honestly, is I wanted more. And I think that's probably the best complaint one can have about a film is I wanted more. I wanted more of the character dynamics, and I wanted it to be longer, and I wanted more of the personalities in the film that you see besides Krisha to be explored, to give the film more depth to really match its visual power. But let me tell tell you, I think that this director, Schultz, this is a guy that you're going to be hearing from more. And I'm just very impressed with him, very impressed with his very first film. And the next film on the list couldn't be further from the first two, but this is La La Land, directed by Damien Chazelle. And this movie is it's just a delight. It's just a joy from beginning to end. It's, I've been thinking about it after watching that movie. It just invigorated me in a way that I haven't been in a long time. Back in the old days, especially the golden age of Hollywood, back when people really put effort into big movies that weren't just kind of summer blockbuster superhero movies, there was a sense that you really felt inspired by these movies. And it could have been anything from Gone with the Wind to Singing in the Rain. These movies were lavish, and they were funny, sad, romantic, nostalgic, all the things that you want out of entertainment. And Chazelle really loves and respects film, and that's so evident here. And the passion is just oozing out of every single frame. And I think that, that is clear to audiences and critics alike. I mean, this movie is referencing so many brilliant musicals. You've got those imaginative ballet sequences that Gene Kelly did back in the 40s and the 50s. And you've got kind of that melancholy bittersweetness of The Umbrellas on Cherbourg, and that palpable chemistry that you had from Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. And yet it works in a modern setting because, again, this is another film kind of like Elle that is very aware of its conceits, and it's trying to kind of make that juxtaposition between the romanticized and reality. It's about the idea that we must make sacrifices in order to achieve our dreams, and that can often be very difficult, especially in LA or just in the world in general. And that painful realization is difficult to handle, and it's handled here in just the most beautiful way. This movie just reminded me why I love movies, and sometimes you need to have that reminder when you get a little bit jaded, and yeah, this was just great. Next is Manchester by the Sea, and this was directed by Kenneth Lonergan. This is, to me, a beautifully, very minimalistic character study that I think is just kind of a stripped down approach that might cause people to be maybe not put off, but I think that this is the kind of movie that is kind of flying under the radar, and people aren't paying attention to it as much because it's not a grand spectacle like La La Land, and it's not some sensory, really kind of almost spiritual experience like Moonlight. This is a film that is really exploring the pain of loss and life, and how the little inconveniences of life will just keep happening to you no matter what circumstance you're in, no matter how hard your life is becoming. Life doesn't care. The film avoids so many cliches, and it isn't afraid of silence. It's not afraid to show you the mundane moments, which to me is so often lacking, especially in Hollywood movies. And I love how many of the character motivations or the feelings are conveyed more through action rather than spoon-feeding the audience and telling everyone how they're feeling. They are allowing us to draw our own conclusions, and that to me makes for just much more gripping cinema. To me, the most powerful concept in the film is the idea that what we want often contradicts what we need, and a lot of times what's best for us does not end up happening because either we're too stubborn or whatever the case, and that is the tragic reality of human nature. And a lot of writers, directors are afraid to explore that, to kind of pull back the velvet curtain and show how life really is, but they weren't afraid here. They didn't shy away from anything, and I just think this is a marvelous piece of work, very grim, but marvelous. And my last film is Moonlight, directed by Barry Jenkins, and this film maybe resonated with me the most of any of them, at least on an initial viewing. To me, it is a masterwork in every sense of the word. It is just visual poetry. It's cinematic. It's sensory. It's deeply emotional and just a work of art. It is a coming-of-age story, and that's a phrase we hear often in movies or when you're writing stories, whatever. But it has kind of an abundance of motifs that you might see as cliche, and yet the way that Jenkins is approaching all of that, it feels so fresh and like you're seeing it through these vivid new eyes. The film is in 3 parts, and I think each one would work so beautifully on its own as just like a short film or whatever, but all together you see the real gravitas, and it all comes together. You see all of the morals and the piece as a whole. And to me, that is the real power of it. And the idea of when you're a child, you have all of these opportunities of where you can go and what you can make of your life. And unfortunately, living in a certain society, no matter what it is, that hardens us slowly and beats us down until we lose who we really were in the beginning, because we build up a callus and we become what society expects us to be. But what I love about the film is that, you may go through that period, and some of us go through it all our lives. But as you get older, you start to realize how short life is and how you slowly want to return to who you once were. And you find yourself kind of not caring at a certain point and starting to find that all of that love and that need to be loved is achingly present, and you can't ignore those emotions. And all of this is explored through the idea of what is masculinity and sexuality. And I just found, especially in the last part of the film, the way it was handled with very little dialogue, all just through the emotion of the cinematography and the music, it moved me. And those are my top five, at least for the moment. There are still a few films that I do want to see, but I just haven't gotten a chance to yet, or it's not available in my area yet. But for now, that's what I've got. So let me know also what your favorite movies of the year were. Feel free to comment below. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, the link is below. You can like my Facebook page, the link below that. You can watch more videos here. And if you want to subscribe, you can do that as well. Catch you next time.